Chamber. Your presence today underscores the importance of the subject matter under discussion. In accordance with the Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of Armenia, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Bulgaria, Canada, Cuba, Djibouti, Egypt, Iceland, India, Indonesia, Iraq, Ireland, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Israel, Japan, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Lebanon, Lithuania, Malaysia, Maldives, Malta, Mauritania, Mexico, the federal states of Micronesia, Morocco, Namibia, the Kingdom of Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Oman, Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Qatar, the Republic of Korea, Romania, Saudi Arabia, Slovenia, South Africa, Spain, Sri Lanka, Switzerland, the Syrian Arab Republic, Thailand, Timor-Leste, Tunisia, Turkey, Uganda, the United Arab Emirates, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Vietnam, and Yemen to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with the Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the following briefers to participate in this meeting. Mr. Khaled Khayari, Assistant Secretary General, Departments of Political and Peace Building Affairs and Peace Operations, and Mr. Tony Blair, Member of the Executive Board of the Board of Peace. It is so decided. In accordance with the Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I also invite the following to participate in this meeting. His Excellency Mr. Ahmed Abul Ghait, Secretary General of the League of Arab States, His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lambrinidis, Head of Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Umar Hadi, Vice Chair of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, and His Excellency Mr. Paul Beresford Hill, Permanent Observer of the Sovereign Order of Malta to the United Nations. It is so decided. I propose that the Council invite the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the Observer State of Palestine to participate in the meeting, in accordance with the Provisional Rules of Procedure and the previous practice in this regard. There being no objection, it is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of Item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Mr. Khaled Khayari.
Mr. President, members of the Security Council, I am briefing you today at a moment of profound regional tension and instability, which is impacting the lives and livelihoods of hundreds of millions across the region and beyond. The tension and hostilities that have upended the Middle East over the past weeks have shifted attention from the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, away from the spotlight. The situation in Gaza and West Bank, including East Jerusalem, is steadily worsening. The population in Gaza faces ongoing and deadly Israeli strikes and dire humanitarian conditions, while in the West Bank, violence, including rampant settled violence, displacement and accelerating settlement activity are threatening entire communities and further eroding the prospects for a political process that will resolve the conflict on the basis of a viable two-state solution. Mr. President, in Gaza, the ceasefire is increasingly fragile as Israeli strikes and armed activities by Hamas and other groups continue. While diplomatic efforts are ongoing with the goal of consolidating the ceasefire and implementing Phase 2 of the comprehensive plan endorsed by United Nations Security Council in Resolution 2803, talks on the disarmament of Hamas and other armed groups have thus far not resulted in an agreement, raising concerns over the potential return to widespread hostilities. Civilians continue to bear the brunt of the ongoing violence. According to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, since the ceasefire began, approximately 800 Palestinians, including more than 200 children, and 7 humanitarian personnel have been killed as a result of Israeli strikes, shelling, and gunfire. The Israel Defense Forces has stated that its strikes have targeted Hamas militants and facilities. Meanwhile, the humanitarian needs on the ground remain overwhelming. Some 1.8 million people, nearly the entire population of Gaza, are displaced and living in IDP camps and are dependent on aid amid ongoing hostilities, devastated infrastructure, and rising public health risks. While some improvements in access and aid delivery have been observed in recent weeks, unpredictable access, limited operational crossings, and restrictions on critical humanitarian items termed dual-use items by Israel continue to constrain UN response. Food security remains a challenge, while essential services, particularly water, sanitation, and health, are again on the brink of collapse. Plans must be advanced urgently, not only for the humanitarian aid, but also for early recovery and reconstruction. On 20 April, the United Nations and the European Union released the final Gaza Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment conducted jointly with the World Bank. According to the assessment, recovery and reconstruction needs in Gaza are estimated at $71.4 billion over the next decade, including $26.3 billion required in the first 18 months to restore essential services, rebuild critical infrastructure, and support economic recovery. To begin addressing the staggering needs across the OPT, the United Nations has recently launched the Horizon Fund, co-chaired by Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa and Deputy Special Coordinator Ramiz Al-Akbarov. This fund will enable the United Nations to implement early recovery planning across the entire OPT, in line with United Nations resolutions and international law. We deeply appreciate Member States' contributions to the fund to date. In order to advance recovery, the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza must be allowed to fulfill its governance and administrative roles as outlined in the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2803, in coordination with the Palestinian Authority, while the other elements of the comprehensive plan are implemented in full. These include the disarmament of Hamas and all other armed groups in Gaza, Israeli withdrawal from the Strip, and the deployment of the International Stabilization Force. Mr. President, turning to the West Bank, between 14 March and 16 April, Israeli Authority advanced plans for 1,080 housing units in the West Bank, including 680 in several settlements in Area C, and planned for 400 housing units in East Jerusalem. On 25th of March, the Israeli cabinet approved 34 settlements across Area C. These include new settlements, regularization of existing outposts and neighborhoods of existing settlements, representing the most extensive such approval to date in a single cabinet decision. During the reporting period, 21 Palestinians, including 6 children, were killed by Israeli forces or settlers in West Bank, and 310, including 45 children, were injured. According to Israeli sources, 1 Israeli was killed and 11 injured, including 1 woman, in Palestinian attacks against Israelis. The frequency and severity of settler attacks continue to increase. Entire Palestinian communities now routinely facing lethal violence, vandalism, and harassment, often in the presence of Israeli soldiers or with their participation. I note of recent expression of concern by some Israeli officials regarding settler violence and call on the authorities to take immediate action to stop the violence. The situation in North and West Bank refugee camps remains alarming. Israeli military operations and access restrictions have led to the prolonged displacement of more than 33,000 residents from Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nur Shams refugee camps. These camps remain largely empty, marking the largest and longest displacement crisis in the West Bank in decades. Mr. President, economic conditions across the West Bank also continue to deteriorate. Rising costs, limited access to employment, and movement restrictions are undermining livelihoods and increasing reliance on humanitarian assistance. The Palestinian Authority faces an existential fiscal crisis that threatens the institutional foundations of a future independent Palestinian state. 9 months of withheld clearance revenues, public debt exceeding $14 billion, and mounting pressures on correspondent banking arrangements leave the Palestinian Authority without the fiscal tools required to sustain itself. Mr. President, on a positive note, on 25th of April, Palestinians seized an important opportunity to exercise their democratic rights by participating in local elections in most of the West Bank and in Deir el-Balah in the Gaza Strip. The United Nations commends the Palestinian Central Elections Commission for its credible administration of the electoral process, given the significant challenges present in the West Bank and the extraordinarily difficult conditions prevailing in Gaza. The United Nations remains committed to supporting and strengthening Palestinian institutions and promoting democratic governance. Mr. President, turning to the region, the United Nations welcomes the 3-week extension of the cessation of hostilities between Israel and Lebanon and the ongoing talks facilitated by the United States. We remain ready to support these efforts and continue to urge the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701 toward a permanent ceasefire and long-term solution to the conflict. On the ground, the situation remains extremely fragile amid ongoing violence, with continued strikes by Hezbollah and Israel, violations of Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and the possession of weapons outside of Lebanese state authority. We urge all actors to exercise maximum restraint, fully respect the cessation of hostilities, and to comply with their obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law, at all times. There is no military solution to this conflict. Diplomacy is the path towards sustainable peace. 6 peacekeepers, 4 Indonesians, and 2 French, serving with the interim force of Lebanon, in Lebanon, have been killed since the 2nd of March, with several more injured. We reiterate our strong condemnation of all attacks on peacekeepers and extend our deepest condolences to their family and friends, as well as to the governments and people of Indonesia and France. Attacks on peacekeepers are unacceptable and must be promptly investigated so that those responsible must be held accountable. The safety and security of United Nations personnel and the inviolability of United Nations property must be respected by all. On the Golan, the Israeli Defense Forces remained on the Bravo side and currently maintain 11 positions, 8 in the area of separation and 3 in area of limitation in the vicinity of the Bravo line. The IDF continues to carry out operations on the Bravo side, including night search operations in villages and in some cases detaining civilians. Some of the civilians were released following interrogation by the Israeli Defense Forces, while others remain in detention in Israel. Mr. President, resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains central to achieving durable peace in the region, as it continues to fuel instability across the Middle East. The meetings of 20 April of the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution and the Ad hoc Liaison Committee underscored the ongoing commitment of the international community to preserving what has been built over the past decades, identifying and reversing the deeply destructive current trends on the ground, and finding ways to translate political will into concrete policy steps on the ground, backed by financial commitments. Despite the current challenges, and as also emphasized in the Global Alliance and ASLC meetings, there is no alternative to a political solution. A political framework that clearly advances the parties toward an end to the occupation and the achievement of a viable two-state solution is essential both to sustainably addressing the urgent needs on the ground and to achieving a just and lasting peace. The United Nations remains committed to supporting all efforts toward this goal. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Khayari for his briefing. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Ben Barth Eide, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Norway and representative of the Ad hoc Liaison Committee.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the Security Council and its presidency, the Kingdom of Bahrain, for allowing me to brief the Council today in my capacity as the chair of the Ad hoc Liaison Committee. And I particularly thank His Excellency Dr. Abdulatif bin Rashid Al Zayyan for chairing this meeting and inviting me. Ever since the HALC was established in 1993, the committee has brought together the parties to the conflict, the key donor countries, and the international organizations with expertise in Palestinian economy. Its ultimate aim is to achieve self-determination for the Palestinian people within a two-state solution with security and dignity for Israelis and Palestinians alike. The HALC met again on Monday, 20th April, last week. I believe that this meeting led to some positive developments, which I'm very pleased to share with this Council. President, Resolution 2803, adopted by this Council on the 18th of November 2025, endorsed President Trump's 20-point peace plan to end the Gaza conflict and create a credible pathway to Palestinian statehood. The peace plan offered new dynamics. The ceasefire in Gaza significantly reduced civilian casualties after years of suffering. Living and deceased hostages were finally returned home to Israel. The resolution also authorized new transitional institutional architecture. It is vital that we do not lose this important momentum. Last week, the HALC brought together key stakeholders, first and foremost Palestine, represented by their Prime Minister, His Excellency Mohammed Mustafa, but also the Board of Peace as a special guest for an important conversation in Brussels. The meeting was co-hosted with the European Union's High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy, Ms. Kaja Kallas. On our agenda was the question of how to implement the 20-point plan and how to improve the situation on the ground in Palestine. One objective of last week's meeting was to establish a clear link between the new temporary structures established under Resolution 2803 and the pre-existing already established structures. This in turn should help consolidate alignment around unified coordination mechanisms. This is essential in order to speed up implementation on the ground, to mobilize donors for early recovery in Gaza, which is so urgently needed, and also to safeguard the economy in the West Bank. President, Resolution 2803 welcomed the establishment of the Board of Peace in Gaza. While some states have joined the Board of Peace, other states, like my own, have chosen not to join. Still, we are convinced that we need to work together to implement this critical resolution that we all support. I would like to commend the United States for their essential role in reaching the ceasefire last October, continued strong US engagement is key in order to move forward. As highlighted in the HALC meeting last week, Hamas's weapons must be decommissioned. This is essential for the plan to work. But this again must happen in a context. The mediators' efforts must be supported so that full recovery and the aspirations of the Palestinians can move forward. Coordinated donor support is critical to humanitarian relief, recovery, and reconstruction in Gaza. The HALC aims to consolidate such efforts and to gather all stakeholders in the same room in order to pursue these common goals. The dedicated liaison committee between the PA, the Palestinian Authority, and the Board of Peace institutions, and the meeting between the Palestinian Prime Minister and the Board of Peace High Representative for Gaza, held in the margins of HALC, are important examples of the coordination urgently needed. The rapid damage and needs assessment that was already referred to was undertaken by the World Bank, the UN, and the European Union together, and published on the day of the HALC meeting. This document constitutes an important basis for recovery and reconstruction efforts. In line with the report and Palestinian plans, donors should scale up assistance through the World Bank instruments, the UN Multi-Donor Trust Fund, Horizon, and other mechanisms for humanitarian support. President, civilians in Palestine, both in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, continue to suffer. The Palestinian economy remains severely constrained, notably by Israeli access and movement restrictions, fiscal challenges, limited Palestinian control over natural resources, and a weakened private sector. There is deep concern among HALC members about growing risks of systemic collapse of the Palestinian institutions and their economy, with ensuing risk to basic public service provision and potential public security implications. Palestinian hospitals, schools, courts, police may stop functioning. Banks may be at risk. This situation is also jeopardizing the pathway to Palestinian self-determination and independent statehood, long-standing and legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. While improving economic prospects will require long-term structural change and a comprehensive political solution, it will be crucial in the short term to get immediate financial support to the Palestinian institutions built over decades with donor support. At our meeting last week, members of the HALC acknowledged the Palestinian Authority's progress in advancing important reforms under challenging circumstances. They encouraged continued efforts on this path. President, Resolution 2803 was an innovative resolution that established new transitional structures in Gaza. It has taken some time to integrate these new structures with the pre-existing structures for assistance and development. At the HALC meeting, we came a long way in committing donors to a coherent, coordinated, and consolidated effort toward our shared objective of improving conditions on the ground. However, further action is required. As chair of the HALC, I call on Hamas to decommission its weapons without delay. The 20-point plan hinges on this essential piece. It must be a sequential process with steps including guarantees, monitoring mechanisms, and overarching security architecture and confidence-building measures. I call on the government of Palestine to continue its reform efforts, including to prepare for its resumption of governance in Gaza in line with the 20-point plan and the Security Council Resolution 2803. I call on the government of Israel to lift restrictions on access and movement, to ensure continued flow and clearance revenues in full, to lift the cap on repatriation of physical shekels, and secure the corresponding banking relations, to reverse expansion of settlements, address settler violence, and hold perpetrators accountable. Israel must furthermore allow for the unimpeded delivery of sustained distribution of humanitarian aid at scale into aid throughout Gaza in accordance with international humanitarian. As for the international community, it should increase assistance at scale and in a timely fashion to the Palestinian people, including budget support and direct assistance to strengthen the Palestinian Authority and enable its reform efforts under a critical moment in time. All parties and UN member states should support implementation of the 20-point peace plan and resolution 2803, including through financial support through World Bank financing instruments and to the United Nations. We should also welcome and support the procedures agreed between the Palestinian Authority and the Transitional Board of Peace institutions. And I want to highlight this. It was made crystal clear by all parties at the meeting in Brussels last week that the transitional arrangements are indeed that, transitional and administrative, and that there is only one recognized government in Palestine. I left the meeting convinced that this important clarification will help facilitate better two-way cooperation between the Palestinian Authority and the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza. President, the purpose of Resolution 2803 adopted by this Council is to ensure that the ceasefire and President Trump's 20-point plan is implemented for every people in the region to finally live in peace. It is the duty of all of us to do our utmost to support the parties in this endeavor and to, step by step, lay the groundwork for a better future. I thank you, Chair.
I thank His Excellency, Mr. Ide, for his briefing. I now give the floor to Mr. Tony Blair, Member of the Executive Board of the Board of Peace.
Mr. President, it's my honor to give the Council an update on Gaza following the briefing given by High Representative Nikolai Mladenov in March. When Mr. Mladenov spoke to this Council, he vividly described the horrors of the October 7, 2023 attack on Israel and the devastation in Gaza following the conflict. I adopt that description and do not need to repeat it. Instead, I shall focus on Gaza as it is now and where we stand with the implementation of President Trump's comprehensive 20-point plan endorsed in UN Security Council Resolution 2803. Mr. President, the situation in Gaza remains precarious. The war has stopped. Violence has fallen dramatically, but ceasefire violations continue. Food assistance has improved. The Rafah crossing is partially open, particularly for medical evacuations. More truckloads of humanitarian aid and commercial goods are entering Gaza to address basic needs. But much more must be done to improve shelter, health, water, and sanitation. Life remains desperate for many. And in one half of Gaza are and Hamas, in the other, the Israeli Defense Forces. Resides in the substantial progress made in the implementation of the President's plan, including the formation of the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, NCAG, the International Stabilization Force, which has completed its pre-deployment assessment mission, and in funding for Gaza, with now over $7 billion of firm pledges. The recent AHLC meeting, as we've just heard, showed the breadth of support for Gaza and its people. And the critical demilitarization talks with Hamas are continuing, led with immense efforts by the mediators of Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, together with the High Representative and representatives of the Board of Peace. So, Mr. President, we've reached a pivotal juncture. And I urge Council members to continue to provide clear and consistent political support for the implementation of the 20-point plan and to mobilize financial contributions for the humanitarian response and recovery in Gaza through the United Nations and World Bank in full coordination with NCAG, backed by the Board of Peace. The reason President Trump's peace plan succeeded in bringing the war in Gaza to an end was that it was based on a strategically coherent framework. It was clear after October the 7th that Israel would never tolerate a situation in which the organization responsible would continue in power. and clear also that a perpetual cycle of conflict would destroy any possibility of a decent future for Gaza's people. This was the worst, but not as a conflict. On previous occasions, they ended not in a solution, but effectively in a series of truces. This time, the scale of destruction, and indeed the determination of President Trump, led us to propose something fundamentally different, harder, more ambitious, but which, if done, will endure because it deals with the roots and not the manifestation of the issue. This United States administration, in my view, has understood two very crucial things. First, not just that Israel is entitled to protect its security, but that it will protect its security. Therefore, there will be no peace in Gaza unless the threat that it will be used as a launching pad for violence against Israel is ended. And that the people of Gaza cannot prosper if pinned between the Israeli Defense Forces on the one side and Hamas on the other. So the President's plan had three elements to it. First, Hamas, as presently constituted, can have no role in governing Gaza, not directly running the government in Gaza, not indirectly by retaining their weapons and therefore their power. Were Hamas to change, to agree that the goal of a Palestinian state should be pursued through political negotiation, and that such a state should live in peace with the state of Israel, it would be free to engage with the politics of Gaza as with any other party which accepts these internationally agreed principles. But until it does so, it cannot. It follows from this that Hamas and every other armed group in Gaza should disarm, decommission weapons as part of what is a Palestinian-led process with monitored and verified implementation. The new government of Gaza should be the sole legitimate authority with arms. This is expressly set out in the demilitarization part of Resolution 2803. Second, equally important but often overlooked, the plan also provides that if the disarmament occurs, then the network of restrictions on people and goods entering and leaving Gaza, in other words, what has made daily life in Gaza so difficult and Gaza's economic future so constrained, that network then loses its rationale and should and will be lifted. This is a huge prize for people in Gaza. The plans for reconstruction being worked upon by the Board of Peace, the OHR, the NCAG, are based on this premise. Gaza not rebuilt, but reimagined. A port, free movement of people and goods, proper infrastructure, new housing, fully able to access the digital economy. And third, because trust is so low and skepticism high, we need a transitional period where international support is necessary to help Gaza on its feet and disarmament happen in a manner Israel will accept. That's why we established the NCAG, an apolitical transitional governing body of respected Palestinians with the highly capable Dr. Ali Shaf as its head, the Office of High Representative under the excellent leadership of Nikolai Mladenov, who also liaises with the Palestinian Authority, an international stabilization force to give credibility to the new security arrangements and new civil police force, and then oversight from the Board of Peace, which under American leadership binds together the key countries in the region along with many others. So we need Hamas to agree with the process of demilitarization of Gaza and to abide by its terms. And we need Israel to abide by its obligations under that same process. Once there is agreement, that will unlock immediately vital progress for the people of Gaza. Additional humanitarian aid and material, new medical facilities, greater freedom at the crossings, including Rafah, the staged withdrawal of Israeli forces, and entry into Gaza of the NCAG. And then on completion of the process, there will be the full withdrawal of Israeli forces in accordance with the terms of the process and freedom for the Gaza people. Mr. President, UN Security Council Resolution 2803 also references a political horizon, a time when a reformed Palestinian Authority resumes control of both Gaza and West Bank, and the possibility of a pathway to a Palestinian state. For many, adherence to the notion of two states is an article of faith. But truthfully, for obvious reasons, many Israelis, indeed many Palestinians, have given up believing it. As I learnt in Northern Ireland, after years of bloodshed, people do come to disbelieve. Trust is zero. Those who try to make peace considered naive. But so also is the notion of total victory. In the 25 years I've been involved in this issue, in many different guises, the population of Israel has risen by over 50%, that of the Palestinians by over 70%. Neither people is going anywhere. The state of Israel will remain, and so will the Palestinian people. So our task is to help the parties create the conditions for peaceful coexistence. That's why we devised this plan for Gaza. If implemented, its people can be prosperous and Israel secure. It's why we also need to address the urgent situation in the West Bank so Palestinians there can share in that prosperity and peace. If Israel is no longer under threat, there is no reason to deny the Palestinian people self-government. If the Palestinians know that this is an attainable objective, dependent on their own efforts, there is every reason to pursue that objective peacefully. Gaza is the test for all of us, whether we repeat the history or we change it. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Blair for his briefing. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Farsin Aghabakian, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the Observer State of Palestine.
Mr. President, allow me at the outset to express our appreciation for your decision to convene this meeting at ministerial level and preside over it. I also wish to express our full solidarity with your country and people and the other Arab countries confronted with outrageous attacks against their sovereignty and territorial integrity. Allow me also to express our appreciation to Assistant Secretary General Khayari, to the Foreign Minister of Norway and Chair of the AHLC, Dear Espen, and Mr. Tony Blair, Member of the Executive Board of the Board of Peace, for their briefings and their efforts. Mr. President, in devastated Gaza, while many lives were saved by the ceasefire, the suffering continues. We have welcomed the efforts for peace undertaken by President Trump, which secured, together with those of other countries and mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, a ceasefire agreement that must be fully upheld. The situation of the Palestinian civilian population must be a top priority in this regard. The killing of Palestinians, including children, by Israel must stop. There's no justification for the delays by Israel in allowing shelter in or the restrictions on aid and humanitarian access. The spread of rodents and diseases, the vulnerability of communities to adverse weather, the delays in restoration of basic services and recovery, and the human and humanitarian consequences of this man-made reality demand immediate attention and response. We reiterate the need for coordinated efforts to address this situation and have established a liaison committee with the Board of Peace for that purpose. We welcome the convening of two important international meetings in Brussels: the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution, led by Saudi Arabia, Norway, and the EU, and the ad hoc liaison committee chaired by Norway and co-sponsored by the EU and the United States. Both meetings highlight the understanding of the international community that Palestine must remain a priority. It is imperative for this resolve to be translated into transformative action. As we embark on phase 2 of the ceasefire, we reiterate our vision of one state, one government, one law, and one gun, and the need for full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. Gaza is an integral part of Palestine, and transitional arrangements must be conducive to the reunification of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip under the Palestinian Authority, as foreseen by this Council, leading to Palestinian self-determination and independent statehood. After so much death, destruction, displacement, and devastation, it is time for life, healing, recovery, and reconstruction. It's essential not to derail these efforts by pursuing policies that President Trump's plan rejected: forcible displacement and annexation. It is clear Israel still pursues these objectives not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Mr. President, annexation is prohibited under the United Nations Charter and under peremptory norms of international law. It's a crime against peace, and it is rejected by the world and President Trump himself. This Council, the General Assembly, and the International Court of Justice have all condemned annexation. Yet annexation is underway in legislation, in policies, and in measures in full defiance of the law and of the will of the international community. It destroys Palestinian community and the prospects for peace. Israel has further escalated its military incursions, settlement expansion, settler terrorism, mass arbitrary arrests and abuse against prisoners, including the death penalty law, severe restrictions on movement, demolition of homes, fragmenting the land, and isolating and uprooting communities by the tens of thousands. In parallel, the Israeli government seeks the collapse of the Palestinian Authority. It considers chaos in the West Bank, like destruction in Gaza, as a means to force people to leave by creating impossible conditions of life. In this context, Israel's withholding of our tax revenues is not merely a financial matter. It's an existential threat against Palestinian institutions and the people they serve. It further undermines our people's right to education, to health, to water, to safety, and much more, and is a matter of international peace and security, deserving the immediate attention and action of this Council. Mr. President, in 2019, settlers shot and killed 38-year-old Hamdi al-Nassan, a father and a husband. A few days ago, in an attack by Israeli soldiers and settlers near a school in Al-Mughayr, Aus al-Nassan, the 14-year-old son of Hamdi, was himself shot dead. A father and a son killed a few years apart, victims of the same violence. The world condemned settler terrorism then and condemned it again now. But our communities, our people, and our children were never afforded the protection they deserve, the protection they are entitled to, and the protection they desperately need. The situation today is extremely alarming as settlers terrorize Palestinians on a daily basis. This has to stop immediately. In this Council, security is often mentioned when it comes to the Middle East, but it rarely refers to the blatant and prolonged insecurity the Palestinian people endure. Mr. President, our response to this devastating reality could have been paralysis, rejectionism, or violence. We chose a different path to reaffirm our commitment to liberation by peaceful means and our unequivocal rejection of violence and condemnation of all attacks against civilians, whether Palestinian or Israeli. We have engaged positively with regional and international efforts that led to the adoption of the New York Declaration. We have welcomed the Trump peace plan and are working constructively with the U.S. administration. We have embarked on reforms and advanced them in impossible circumstances, where instead of being empowered to pursue them, we are being undermined. 2 days ago, we organized local elections, including in Deir el-Balah in Gaza. as part of our efforts to exercise our democratic life. Help us demonstrate to the Palestinian people that the peaceful path does lead to freedom, peace, and prosperity. Mr. President, the Israeli foreign minister sat around this table a couple of months ago to defend illegal Israeli settlements and claiming that Palestinians building in their own land was illegal. He negated the very existence of Palestine, claiming it was a pure invention when our existence is undeniable. He added, since there is no Palestine, how could its land be occupied? He should ask his occupation forces, his military courts, his bulldozers, and his armed settlers whose land they are stealing, whose lives they are shattering, if not Palestinian land and Palestinian lives. Mr. President, I came to you from the Holy Land. Every square meter is filled with history and spirituality. All monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have a deep connection to this land. The Israeli foreign minister fell short in his explanation as he stressed only one connection, espousing exclusivity. Let me remind, this is also the birthplace of Christianity, where Jesus was born, lived, preached, was crucified, and resurrected. This is the land where Al-Aqsa, the first of the two Qiblas, stands in the heart of Jerusalem, the city from which Prophet Muhammad ascended to the heavens. Diversity is this land's destiny. It's a blessing, not a curse. There's no space here for exclusivity, monopoly, or supremacy. When Israel claims respect to this diversity, it should question its commanders that order bombing of churches and mosques, its soldiers who deny celebration of Palm Sunday, or who attack pilgrims on Holy Saturday or during Ramadan, its ministers who perform Talmudic rituals at Al-Haram al-Sharif, and Israeli governments breaching the historic status quo which has been essential for peaceful coexistence of people of all faiths in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land, and transcending them across the globe. This is not a religious conflict, and the outrageous claim that persecution of Palestinians is justified by a so-called war between the Judeo-Christian civilization against Islamic barbarism should be rejected by all. This narrative aims at making this conflict impossible to resolve and irresponsibly inflames tensions among communities across the globe. For us Palestinians, regardless of our faith, this conflict is about the negation of our rights and of our existence in our ancestral land. It will end with the end of the occupation and the recognition of our rights and the independence of our state. The two-state solution based on international legitimacy is the only way forward. Mr. President, we will not achieve a brighter and more secure future by negating each other's existence, by inflaming historical and religious claims, or by trying to justify monopoly and supremacy on a land whose history and geography have defined it as a land of pluralism and diversity. This is a dead end. How many more people have to die for all of us to choose another path? That path exists. It is within reach if we finally make the right choices. It means a world in which Palestine and its people are free, and Palestinians and Israelis live side by side in security, a world in which two states, Israel and Palestine, are at peace. That peace is only possible among equals, not between oppressor and oppressed, occupier and occupied, dominant and subjects. It will not be achieved by more violence, more dehumanization, and more wars. It must be based on mutual recognition, on justice, not vengeance, on a vision for the future, not a perpetuation of the evils of the past, on shared humanity, where we all are endowed with the same rights and every life is sacred. Peace and unleashing of the potential of peoples in our region are long overdue.